take the time to listen. So those were really hard messages for me, that I didn't have to be so hard charging, so hard driving. And I needed to slow down so that people could really see the compassion that was in my heart.
Right. And I find that as well, especially when it comes to feminine leadership, because we also tend to, and this comes from our childhood and then society, right? But then we do it to ourselves where we put on this masculine persona where we have to be a badass and
Welcome to the Resilient Minds podcast, stories of grit, growth, and success, where we dive deep into the journey of successful leaders who've struggled and succeeded. Before the wins, before the titles, what was the mindset behind the leader? On this show, we focus on real stories behind the success, the struggles, the resilience, and the courage it takes to keep moving forward, even when times get tough. My goal is to provide you with stories of hope and transformation, showing that no matter the challenges, there is a way forward. On this show, we'll be meeting with highly successful leaders who've battled through obstacles, emerging stronger and wiser on the other side. This show is for anyone who wants to grow, evolve, and find the light at the end of the tunnel. Everyone's a leader. So together, we'll uncover what it truly means to evolve as leaders, and ultimately, as human beings. This is Resilient Minds.
Hey, I'm your host, Dr. Campbell, and I'm here with Dr. Melanie Gray, and she is the confidence coach, and she's here to talk to us about the high levels of stress, especially in the medical field. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell, for having me. It is my great honor. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Well, me too. We talk about stress in business and, as an entrepreneur or, other high level peak performance areas where people are just stressed out because there's like fast growing companies, especially like tech, stuff like that, right? But what we really don't give enough credit to is the healthcare field until something like COVID happens.
hmm Yes, and it really amplified the stress and fear of what is going to happen to my patients, but what is going to happen to me if I'm exposed? What is going to happen to my family? What can they survive me having exposed them? And women, nurses, young, during COVID were afraid of, well, if I take the vaccine, will I be able to conceive? Because there were so much in the literature about what the vaccine would or would not do in terms of its long-lasting effects. So it changed healthcare and people, I think, forever.
Right, absolutely. I would agree. And from a neuroscience perspective, when the entire globe was shaken and all the fear comes up, when you have fear in one area surface, because it's stuck in the body, right? That's how we feel our emotions.
hmm
It actually triggers unresolved emotional landmines in your body from other things from the past, relationships, traumas, because one fear in one area, it doesn't differentiate. It will trigger everything in your body that has to do with fear. So everybody's stuff also came up. Did you see a lot of that, like relationship dynamics, trauma surfacing in the hospitals during COVID?
Yes, in fact, one of the things that was observed was how unkind people became to each other. In the early parts when of the pandemic, when masks were and the premium masks N95s were at a we had to share them. People had to be assigned them, and they had to keep them in their bags. People were stealing one another's masks. The fear, the anxiety, the unkindness, having to remind people we still have to be kind to each other was something I never experienced before in my career. And
Yeah.
we're still seeing it. I think within healthcare, within other industries, I'm observing the need to clarify the importance of being kind in creating safe and psychologically safe workplaces.
Right, absolutely. Because that's what you do now, right? Like you write curriculum.
Yes. I
Uh,
write curriculum and I work with organizations to create safe healing cultures. Because Jacqueline, when organizations think about health and wellness, it's not all about offering a yoga class. People, or a gym where people can work out. Uh, Employees, healthcare and beyond, they need support in how to manage work and life. And life goes on when people come to work. They don't drop their life, they don't drop their fears, they don't drop the news off at the door and just focus on work. And yet, work has an extension. When our parents probably were in their heyday, and when I was in the beginning of mine, when I left work and clocked out, I was done. Nobody was emailing me, nobody was texting me. I didn't have access to anything, to do anything at home. And yet now it goes on and on and on. And it creates stress,
yeah.
ongoing tension, where their stress levels are always, cortisol levels are always firing, and it never stops. And then people don't know how to set boundaries in their life to stop, because the cultural expectation is, well, if my boss texts me and emailed me at 8 in the evening when I'm with my family, I need to do it too. So what cultures are we creating? What are your children remembering? I mean, it just is a little bit amazing.
Absolutely. And you do see that the culture is based off of what the normal practices for the leadership is. So really the leaders are the ones that are needing this shift because it's going to go down to the employees.
Well, it really is, and I understand matrix, right? We can't, your KPIs. We cannot have an honest discussion about work if we don't. We cannot ignore the expectations within organizations to be productive, so that people keep their jobs. But I do think organizations have to consider, how much can you ask a person to do, and what culture are you setting? Because we teach people how to treat us, right? And everything isn't urgent. I believe that we have to take a minute to decide to calm ourselves, to ask ourselves, observe what is the situation, what is important and needs to be handled right now, immediately, or what can actually wait. Sometimes cultures are created in which everything is urgent, everything isn't. And that's doesn't always teach well either.
Right. Well, because you can't learn in fear either. You need the calm, then ground, open up your brain again. And then when you
Mhm.
look at the situation, you see it more clearly, then you can integrate the information. That's actually when the education happens, right? But when you're talking about people who can't emotionally regulate and everything's urgent, they can't differentiate what an actual emergency is because it's perspective, right?
Yes. And the perspective is always based on something that happened in your past experience in life, in childhood, in your past experience in college, in your past work experience, your past experience on your current job. And they all, in some way, shape how we react, and we have to decide. One of the messages that I give people sometimes, when I'm working with them is, so is this the best fit for you?
Mm,
Is this culturally the best environment for you to work? Or are you able to make some adaptive changes in how you communicate and respond? Does your organization, will it allow that?
right.
Sometimes it will and sometimes it won't.
And those are very great questions because sometimes they're yes and sometimes they're no,
Mhm.
right?
And there's the fear of what if, what if I don't find anything? What will I do? The reality of life doesn't change, but I believe people, if you know something isn't working, nobody told you to quit right away without a job,
Right.
right? But you can plan to pivot. Often people are afraid to change and they keep themselves fired up because they just aren't, they need to see a financial advisor and stop spending so much money.
Mm.
right? Because if you could shape your life in a way that you don't need so much, you can reorder your priorities, you can reduce your stress and how you show up at work because it is a combination, right? How you show up is a combination of all the facets of your life.
Right. So now, to me, what it seems like is we've kind of already broke down like what an emergency is, right? We have childhood traumas making us operate out of fear. Then
Hmm.
we have our own dysfunctional behaviors and our impulsive and compulsive behaviors, right? That operate our money, which always goes into we need to get paid more, right? Or the business needs to make more. And then we actually have emergencies, like something could catastrophic is going to happen if this does not get done by this deadline. Whatever
Hmm.
that is. One of the things that I like to have a conversation with is the perspective of the deadline. Well, is that realistic or is it going to cause stress? Because if it's going to cause stress, it's probably better to extend it a little bit so you can go a little bit more slower so you can be more effective. But that's also a lot of the time we want more in less time, which is instant gratification. And that also goes into childhood.
Well, I think what I appreciate about what you just shared is also we need to we don't work in silos. I think we make things urgent sometimes when we have to do it. When there are smart people around us, let's elevate them. Let's share the work. Let's collaborate and work as a team to see what might be the best solution. I think leaders have to admit that sometimes the people around us are smarter than we are. And that's a good thing. I love smart people. I don't have to be the smartest person in the room, and I know that I'm not. And my goal is if you lift people, my mentor told me that we must lift as we climb. So as you are climbing the ladder, of your success and meeting your goals, don't forget to lift the people around you and acknowledge and utilize their gifts and talents because you hired them for a reason. So you don't have to take everything on as emergent and immediate. Talk to the team, collaborate. We're better together.
Right, absolutely. So when it comes to like, because I've learned that lesson hard, the hard way. I tanked a business because I couldn't not do everything, right? And so sometimes we do have to learn that the hard way, but as long as you get the lesson, that's okay because it'll
Yeah,
never happen again.
never.
What is a time in your life that you learned an exceptionally difficult lesson, but you're actually grateful for it now?
I think I learned one of the more difficult lessons I learned early on was that so I'm 6 feet tall, Jacqueline. You can't tell.
I cannot.
And but yeah, so I'm 6 feet tall, and I was taught to be direct, speak up for yourself, never let anyone run over you. And so I that's how I showed up. I had to be first to speak. Uh, my voice used to be much higher, and I learned over time to drop it down so people didn't think I was yelling and being a snooty poo. And but I learned how I was perceived.
Mm,
When my leader told me that you really have a great heart, you have great ideas, but it's just how you come off.
mm,
And I was like, what? What's wrong with what do you mean? And
mm,
she told me this is how you perceive. You have great ideas, you work hard, but people are afraid of you. And and I thought, me afraid of me? I'm a mush mouse. No, no, but people are afraid of you. And it's your tone. You're very direct and you have to take the time to listen. So those were really hard messages for me that I didn't have to be so hard charging, so hard driving. And I needed to slow down so that people could really see the compassion that was in my heart.
right. And I find that as well, especially when it comes to feminine leadership, because we also tend to, and this comes from our childhood and then society, right? But then we do it to ourselves where we put on this masculine persona where we have to be a badass and, do all the things and get into hustle culture. And it tends to make us more hard and rougher. And so when it comes to feeling our emotions, because we don't want to be soft or weak, especially as women, women are perceived sometimes as having too many emotions or being too much. Because of that fear that we don't want to be seen like that, a lot of leaders, feminine leaders, they don't want to take off those masks. But they absolutely are experience the same thing. We get softer, more feminine, but we still get to stand in our strength.
Well, as an African American woman, people automatically minimize you because you're African American. I mean, they automatically think you're not as smart as they are. There is, and forgive me, but I will be if I can say it, Jacqueline, there is a thing of white privilege. And I was always taught I have to work harder. I have to do 100% more than anyone around me. I've been in the room. I'm a professor. I've been with students, and all of my students could be Caucasian, and patients will actually ask the students, is that really your professor? She's really teaching you?
Mm.
I've been on the floor where physicians, I would be standing next to them, big RN tag, easy to read. And they would talk to a Caucasian aide, nursing assistant, and I would be standing shoulder to shoulder with them. But they just dismissed me because of what I look like. So that does create, and that's not just my experience. If you would talk to other women of color, men of color, you might hear, I know you would hear similar stories. And that also plays in, I think into behaviors that we see in the workplace, either when people don't speak up because they're not chosen, or they feel I'm not seen because I'm how I look and my culture anyway. And this is not just African Americans, but I think it shows up in our fears and our behaviors, in our communication, and across many levels.
Well, it does because if there's a perspective that they're going to minimize you anyways, you do tend to shrink or you tend to get too big because you're wanting to be seen, right? So it's still an extreme. And
Hmm.
and it goes, yes, the white privilege, but then there's the age gap too. If we dismiss younger people's opinions because they're younger, or the gender gap, or the sexuality gap, like there's so many different stereotypes that if one, we work on ourselves so we can see ourselves more authentically,
Hmm.
then I feel like there would be way less stereotypes in all of the different areas because then we can naturally see other people for who they are. Oh, I just dropped my book. But a lot of individuals don't even realize they have those stereotypes because they can't see themselves clearly.
Well, and some people don't see themselves clearly because they live in a very small box. If you only associate with people who live in your neighborhood, have your economic, are at the same level of economic status, uh, and so on, social culture, you're only going to see the world through that lens. I volunteer always. I just took a board seat on an organization called Repairs of the Breach, which works with the homeless. We serve the homeless because I always feel that it's important to serve and to keep myself diverse in my perspective of the world because that helps me be grounded and also better support the people that I want to serve.
Right, absolutely. Because when you're talking about serving too, I also think balance is always the best, right? Because if we have any extremes, we're not balanced internally.
No, ma'am.
When you want to be a leader, I think that's even more imperative for you to have that balance of that servitude, right?
Hmm.
When it comes to the hardest thing that you've ever had to overcome in your life, what would you say that it was?
The hardest thing I had to overcome.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, I would say that it's not work related necessarily, but it could be. It's just disappointment
Mm,
because I've had a really great career, Jacqueline. I've had a great career in healthcare and healthcare leadership, led great teams, but I honestly never got the dream job and that I thought I wanted at the time. And I think that was that disappointment of did that part of my life did it just pass and So now what? And so I think I had to pivot. And that's really kind of what led me to this chapter of my life where I'm doing the consulting, where I didn't get the dream job. And I honestly think, if I can be honest, that it was because I'm on my third cycle of being 29.
I think you got plenty of time.
you know and but the disappointment, and I do, and I that was the hardest for me, that I didn't hit the pinnacle that I thought I was wanting to reach for, but I just had to pivot. And I think that that's an important message to be shared, because everyone doesn't get the pinnacle. It doesn't mean you're not successful. It doesn't mean that you cannot give and cannot contribute, but sometimes we have to do it differently.
Right. That makes sense. Well, I truly appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for your wisdom and sharing your story.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a great privilege.
All right. See you later.
Thank you so much for joining. Your time and your focus are your most valuable currencies, so thank you for giving that to us today. Our guest contact information will be in the description below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. But please, if you know someone who's struggling, stop right now and send this video to them. The struggle behind growth and success is real, and they need the support to make it, because the strongest minds are the ones that healed. So don't forget, lead louder, feel deeper, and stay resilient. Until next time, this is your host, Dr. Campbell, on the Resilient Minds podcast.